Good morning and welcome to this Thrive event of Allyship. Today I'm going to introduce our moderator, Linda Cole. Linda is a CPA and Associate Vice President for Finance for the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. In her current role, Linda oversees the Office of Budget Planning, the Office of Procurement Services, financial operations of the Notre Dame International, and the training, development, and talent management programs for the finance division. This includes oversight of the budget planning and strategic sourcing activities for the university's $1.5 billion operating budget, including multi-year budget development and analysis, financial modeling, and forecasting, and monitoring the university's annual spending and vendor relationships. It also includes financial oversight of the Notre Dame International, which includes 5 global gateways, 6 international centers, and multiple study abroad student locations. In addition, she also works collaboratively with finance division leadership and talent management, training, and development of finance employees. She has been at Notre Dame since 1998. Prior to joining the university, Linda worked in public accounting for Crowe, Horwath, and South Bend, Indiana. Linda is active with the National Association of College and University Business Officers. She serves on the Planning and Budgeting Forum Program Committee and has spoken at various programs and contributed to various publications, including serving on the Budgeting Publication Advisory Committee. She is also a concurrent assistant professional specialist on faculty at Notre Dame, teaching in Moreau First Year Experience Program and teaching in the Mendoza College of Business. Linda obtained Master of Accountancy and Bachelor of Science in Accounting degrees, both from Manchester University in northern Manchester, Indiana, where she is currently a member of the Board of Trustees and serves on the Executive Committee, the Institutional Vitality Committee's chair, and the Audit Committee. She is also a graduate of the Harvard University Institute for Leadership and Management in Higher Education. Linda serves on several nonprofit boards, including the Center for Homeless and Early Childhood Development Center, both in South Bend. She is also active in St. Michael and All Angels Parish in South Bend. She has been active with Leukemia Lymphoma Society, serving on the board of the Indiana chapter, on the Student of the Year Task Force, and as a team and training participant. She and her husband, Doug, are proud parents of 2 children, Evan, and Megan. Please welcome Linda Kroll.
Good morning. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for that. That's probably my longest bio that's out there, so now you know all about it. Well, I'm really thrilled to be here and to kick off one of these events of Ally Week, so thank you to everybody who's joining us. We have a few different lenses today that we're going to look at. Allyship comes in a lot of different forms, and we're all capable of being wonderful allies and maybe sometimes of not being allies, but trying to go too far, take over someone's cause in a way that takes us beyond allyship. And so today we're really going to spend some time talking about that great sweet spot of allyship where we're standing shoulder to shoulder with people, bringing the best version of ourselves to kind of help understand more about diverse people and diverse cultures and identities, but also figure out how we can not only grow in our understanding, but grow in our support and our partnership of so many different people within the Notre Dame community, within our work environment, within our student population as well. So we're going to focus really on kind of 3 different lenses today. We're going to talk about men as allies, we're going to talk about the LGBTQ plus allyship, and then we're going to talk about women as allies. So hopefully you'll leave today with some understanding of those 3 different populations of people and some great allyship stories, as well as some actions that you can take back in being a better ally in your environment. So to start, we have Michelle Johnson, Latanya Ferguson, and Marty Klubek. So Marty and Michelle are on Zoom, and Latanya is here in person. And I'm going to turn it first to you, Marty, Michelle, and then to Latanya, to tell us a little bit about yourselves and introduce yourself to the group, and then we're going to start off with a few questions for all of you. So, Marty, I will let you go first. Oh, Marty, you're muted.
So thank you very much. One of the things I do when I speak most times, I like to speak, I like to do public speaking besides doing the things that we're talking about, which helping people be successful, is that I tell people I can speak pretty fast, but I can never speak as fast as you can listen. So I usually can get in my whole bio really fast, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not really crazy about telling you about my bio. I'm more interested in telling you about my relationship with these two ladies and others that I've worked with. So a quick introduction is just simply that I spent a few years in the Air Force honing and creating and getting a degree, a master's degree in human resource development. And what I understood that was organizational development. How can I help an organization, team, or unit improve what they do? So I worked with Rec Sports, I worked with Institute of Latino Studies, I worked with our own OIT departments in trying to help them improve the organization. And a young lady, Carmen, in the ILS, Institute of Latino Studies, came up to me after I was working with them as a team. We had these long retreats and spend time together. And she said, wow, can you do this for like one person, just like one-on-one? And I said, I don't know, I've never tried it, let's do it. And so I did a organizational development session with Carmen one-on-one, and it was the most rewarding experience I've had and she had, and it worked out really great. And I'll probably tell you about that maybe later if you ask the right questions. But suffice it to say, from that day forward, I included coaching and helping individuals improve and find ways to develop themselves as well as organizations.
Great, thank you, Marty. Michelle, I'm going to turn it to you.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Michelle Johnson. I started at the university 15 years ago in our Office of Information Technologies in our project management office. And about 3 years ago, I moved to another division in OIT, and I'm now the manager of service and platform management. I manage a team of 9 individuals, and we help the things go. I'm just going to leave it at that. So I met Marty pretty much as soon as I started, and throughout the time that he and I have worked together in a lot of different avenues. Some of the stories we'll tell in a little bit. You can see where his background with organizational development and then what he discovered about coaching other people and helping people develop and grow will definitely come out.
Thank you. And lastly, LaTanya.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Actually, Marty and I met when I was facilitating a workshop with the Office of Human Resources, and that was about 10 years or so. We had a discussion after the workshop. We discovered that we had mutual interest of personal and professional development for individuals. And then from that, it's almost like an organic mentorship was developed where he started where I was kind of in a position of power because I was facilitating the workshop. And then when I found out his skill set, the power differential shifted because he had a knowledge base that I wanted to utilize, which was strategic planning and trying to figure out how can I achieve my goals of serving my colleagues on campus with their career development, but being strategic about it. And then I don't know if you remember our strategy session, Marty, you always brought me back to the main topic of, if this is your goal, why are you doing this? Because this is not meeting your goal. And I think that's what happens with a lot of us. We begin setting goals and doing activity, but we haven't set a strategy for it. And if you set a strategy, then you have something to achieve. And so that's how our relationship developed. It was organic, but he definitely helped me out in that strategic planning that I needed.
That's great.
I'm glad you brought that up, LaTanya, because I didn't think about saying it, but it's critical, is how we look at what we want to get done. And we many times confuse what we want to get done, tasks, with why we want to achieve it, our purpose, and then the goals are the big high-level things we need to do to get to that why. So that whole conversation is what we did with organizational development and what I've been able to do individually. It's the how I coach. But yeah, more important, I guess, today is just why do we get along and why are we working together on these things?
That's great.
And I'll just add quickly, I looked up the definition of allyship, and I found it interesting. This quote, it's not about paving the way, but rather to walk the walk with them. And he never, I never felt like he was superior to me or that he had all the knowledge. It was a mutual collaboration there. Just thought that.
That's because I'm not superior or above you or better than you in any way, shape, or form.
Your knowledge of metrics, you are superior to me.
Yeah. And LaTanya, I think you mentioned a really great point about allyship is sometimes we feel that it's taking up the cause and leading the charge, but it's really walking beside and gaining a greater understanding. So I know you've had you've shared a little bit, but I'm going to turn to you and to Michelle. So Michelle, I might start with you. Tell us, both of you have identified Marty as someone who's been a tremendous ally to you. Can you talk about some of the ways that he's walked shoulder to shoulder with you in helping be a good ally and helping you to accomplish things that were meaningful and important to you? So Michelle,
Sure.
Let's start with you.
So when I first met Marty when I was in the project management office, he and another colleague who has since retired, we were put together to work on the metrics for the project management office. So we needed to transform what had sort of been there and to make them a little bit more defined and such. And Marty, as LaTanya said, is a primo expert on metrics and efficiencies. And so immediately he and I clicked because I like numbers. I like to be able to quantitatively look at different things and look at trends and things like that. And so it speaks to my visual learning aspect of it. And so when he and I would talk, his orientation around the topics were, what are you trying to answer? What's the question? What are you trying to get to? And it would help guide me in answering that question to figure out what we needed to do. And it was just his ongoing way of working that. It came across very authentically that he was very vested in making this work, because I was charged with this responsibility and asked to and had Marty and Don in to make sure that we had a really good product. And Marty was very vested in making sure that what we did actually was good and helping me understand more broadly about the concept of metrics and measures and why we're doing this. And we just developed a really good rapport that has continued over the different years. And I actually partnered with him on a organizational-wide metrics effort that he was doing to try and guide him on how to navigate project methodologies so that he could accomplish the goal that he had. And what was nice about the dynamic of Marty is that he's very open to discussing all sorts of things, and he is really, really respectful in terms of giving constructive feedback to individuals. It usually starts with, do you want some constructive feedback? And he always does it with a tone and a body language and a sincere intent to help me improve and grow in those different areas. And I have just really valued that relationship that I've had with Marty over the years. And now actually through a series of reorganizations and such, he in his role that he plays now as a service offering manager for some of our enterprise solutions, he actually reports to me now. And it's really, really nice to have a trusted advisor and somebody who I know is extremely vested in my success and my growth as an individual, my growth as a manager on my team. So we get to continue the conversations, and he's just across the hall normally when we're in, to be able to do that.
That's great. LaTanya, how about you?
Exactly what Michelle said.
Okay, perfect, yeah.
But it actually mirrored a lot of what Michelle said. It was just a different framework. One thing I would say about Marty is that he's very good at adjusting his message to the audience that's hearing it. So unlike Michelle, I do not like numbers. I don't hate them, but I have a love-hate relationship with them. But he allowed me to stop thinking about numbers and that you don't like them, and look at what the numbers are telling you. And then that really helped me connect to metrics. Like if I could look at a program I facilitate, if the numbers are there, is it something I want to pursue, or are there other things going on to increase attendance? So I would say the nature of our relationship was very developmental, but it was also very collaborative. And I would say I never thought of Marty as an ally, but when I look at the definition of allyship, it's very much so. But I would also say it was very organic, and we had similarities. And when I think of other people that are allies to me, it's allies in different ways.
Great, thank you. So Marty, we've had a chance to hear a lot about you. I'd love to ask you, what are the things that you think you bring that make you the best ally that you can be? How do you approach an allyship situation? And what are some of the key things that you think make you so successful from the things Michelle and LaTanya have had to share?
I think I would say I was blessed. I was blessed by the upbringing I had, with the family I had, my race and my history, my experiences in life. Going into the military for 20 years, my brother told me, I was asking him about 10 years ago. He's 3 years older than me. I'm pretty old, guys. And I asked him, I said, you never gave me advice in my life. I always felt, I wish I had advice from someone. I wish I had a mentor, right? I wish I had an ally in you, my brother. I love him. He's smart. He's genius. Why didn't you ever help me? And he says, well, 2 times in my life, I thought really strongly about giving you advice. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I would have told you not to join the Air Force and not to marry your wife. So I'm like, okay, great. So that's good. 2 things would have been bad. The reason he didn't think I should join the Air Force was because I was an artist. I did artistic things. I was a painter, writer, drawer. And he said, that's going to ruin you. They have so much discipline. And really, that discipline actually helps you with your creative side. Having a discipline allows you to focus and use your time better. So for advice, I don't know, for what I do, what makes me, I like that Michelle said that, he never does this, he never does that, he never makes me feel this way, he never makes me feel that way. He's honest, he's sincere. And same thing LaTanya said. And if someone were to come to me and said, well, how do I do that? I tell them, you're already in trouble, because you shouldn't be asking how you can be sincere and how you can not make someone feel small or belittled. I don't do those things consciously. I look at them and I see, wow, what potential. These people, they're already doing great things, and everyone can do great things. Everyone can be great. I believe everyone has a purpose in life, and they can achieve it. And I feel one of my callings, my vocations, is helping people find that purpose in life and helping them be successful. My dad told me when I was a little kid, the best way for you to be successful is to help somebody else be successful. And so I don't know if it makes me successful in the eyes of society. It definitely makes me successful in my own eyes and in the eyes of my religion and my spirituality, that I'm helping other people. It's why I believe I'm here.
Great. So you've all had a chance to talk about times that you've had allyship relationships that have been successful, clearly amongst the 3 of you. And it sounds like, Marty, I feel in your comments a sense of allyship benefit that you even get from what you've been able to do. It's furthered you. So being an ally, you're getting a return that's creating an ally for yourself also. So you've shared with us some of the times how this looks the best. Do you all have examples for times where this hasn't looked the best? Maybe not necessarily in this relationship, but in other relationships where someone has attempted to be an ally. Have you seen some not good examples, or have you had times in even this ally relationship where you've had struggles? And can you talk a little bit about those times?
I'll go first, because mine's going to be pretty short. I've not found the time when someone wants to be an ally with me or where I want to be an ally with them, and it did not and it had a negative problem or a negative issue. If you come to a relationship sincerely, wanting to help someone improve and be successful, not even improve, be successful in life, I've not had a negative. Now, the university is pretty funny. You might think I had two negatives at least, because at least two people I was helping left the university. One of them left Carmen, the first one I told you about. Her dream, her purpose was to change our school system across the United States so that a second language and understanding the culture of other nations would be inherent in our grade school system, just like it is in other countries. And so she left ILS, she got a PhD, even though she had to do it part-time, working on her degree while she had a family and trying to support them. She ended up, after that, now she's working, I think she works for Holy Cross, and she's teaching and she's pushing her agenda of that. But she ended up leaving Notre Dame to make her dream come true. And so that happens, right? If you're truly trying to help somebody achieve their calling in life, it might not be where they're at today. It might be, but it might not be where they're at today. And they might have to make drastic changes, which might take them away from you and might take them away from the organization that they're in, but it's the right call for them.
So my example is actually speaks a little bit to some of the adjectives that we've used. Is I had an ally or two where the reason they were doing it was for themselves versus for being an ally with, whatever the scenario was going on, and their value system and their integrity was not something that I would want to model myself after or follow advice from. And so that relationship did not bear fruit from a positive side of things. But what it speaks to is, if you are wanting to be an ally to somebody, you need to be sincere about being their ally, not being an ally can help you. Because it's not about you, it's about them. And that is something that really matters, or it's not going to be a successful relationship. And it's pretty obvious pretty quickly what the motivation is if you go into it in a non-genuine fashion.
Great, thank you.
And just really quickly, I honestly can't think of a specific example of quote unquote bad allyship, but I would say when it feels right, pursue it. And when Marty and I met and we found our mutual interests, it was just organic. We didn't like plan to okay, you were going to do this. It was just organic. So when you find allies, it should have that feeling of this is right. And if not, there's so many other people out there that can be.
That's great. How about any parting thoughts from the three of you before we turn to our next topic? And I'm going to try to make sure we have some time at the end for questions, if anybody would like to ask questions of our entire group up here. But any final words before we move to our second piece of allyship?
I'd only offer what is it, catchphrase from Nike: "Don't try, just do it."
That's a great way to end. Well, so our second topic, or our second variety of allyship, has to do with LGBTQ plus allyship. So I am going to turn it to Gabrielle Kunsman, who's joining us today, to introduce herself, tell us a little bit more about herself, and we'll jump into a few questions for her.
So I prepared a lot of those questions as more like a talk, so
Perfect.
We can go as fluid as you want to. My name is Gabrielle. I work with University Events and Enterprises IT and Operational Effectiveness team. It's very much we look at the software that we're using at an organizational level and how do we use it right, so that we have good data, we're making good decisions, and we're not overworking our people. As far as my name, because I always get asked this question, Gabrielle, do you prefer Gabby, Gabs? What do you prefer? I honestly like any version of my name, and that is one of the advantages of choosing your own name. So I like it all. And then my only other thing that I like to lead off with is I don't know if you all could notice by me having to step outside at the beginning of this, I'm a slight nervous wreck, so I might cry. Either now or after. Last time I did one of these, I cried before and after. So, everybody here was nice enough to give me some questions to think about. Last time I did one of these, I kind of just winged it. And I want to talk about a little bit of my past, pre-Notre Dame, a little bit of my past in Notre Dame, and I want to connect that to allyship and our view on the world. What does being an ally mean? If you're allied with me, then who are you allied against? How are you influencing those people who don't believe everything that we believe? And is everybody involved receiving humanity and respect, dignity? Those are the biggest questions here. The first thing I like to talk about is before my time at Notre Dame, I was also in the military. I was in the United States Army National Guard as an infantryman. So if you haven't figured it out from my intro or me, I'm a transgender woman. It's a unique perspective being in the Army. I didn't quite fit in. Had very few friends, and most of my time in the Army was spent toughening up and getting through, keeping my head down. The infantry is also a very, very interesting place because it attracts a certain type of person, and it has a very specific job. Whenever I do a job interview, I'm asked very frequently, how did the Army prepare you for employment? And I've never answered this question honestly because the infantry prepares you to incapacitate, harm, and kill your fellow human beings. So that doesn't exactly play well in an interview at the University of Notre Dame. But the people that it attracts from time to time are people that do, in part, believe those things. And it's almost a requirement of your job to be able to do it. And every once in a while, somebody likes the job. I've heard soldiers say we should just bomb them all. The National Guard has a lot of crossover between soldiers and law enforcement. I've heard law enforcement officers say, of course I'd beat a suspect for speaking back. I've not only heard these things, but I know they're true because I've thought these things. I devalued human life. It's how I got through my job day to day. So if you are... That's what I'm trying to kind of work through myself is if you're allying with whoever you're allying with and you're allying against somebody, that other person, they're thinking things opposite to you. How do you show them understanding, humanity, and respect still though? Because the ultimate goal is a conversation. We want to turn people into allies, not turn people away. I've also had the experience of working here at Notre Dame, which is a completely different experience. Don't know if anybody could have guessed that. When I first started transitioning, I was lucky enough to be doing it here, and my view of the world started to shift thanks to it. My female coworkers started to confide in me a bit more. They shared their struggles, they shared about bosses that don't listen to them, or coworkers that speak over them. And I started to see things from a different view. I've had opportunities to learn from so many other people as well. One of my best friends on campus, Torrance, is a great leader, and it kind of goes to this idea of you need to reach out and learn as much as you can about other people and understand where they're coming from. This is one of the interesting things about being transgender. I'm neither in the camp of men nor women. Nobody fully includes me in their club. But I have an insight that most in either camp will never see. I've had men confide in me their hate, and I've had women confide in me their pain. So the second question that everybody was nice enough to provide me with was, what does allyship mean to me, and how has it impacted my career at Notre Dame? I think allyship is a battle, and I mean that very, very literally. The term ally even makes us think of sided conflict. That battle is both an internal battle and an external battle. The internal battle is the one where we have to challenge our perceptions of the world, practice being aware of our allies' struggles, educate ourselves, and much like I had to, relearn the value of life. This isn't always easy, especially if you haven't seen the world from another person's point of view ever. I've had that thanks to my transness, but sometimes we don't always have that to help us out, and that's where allyship comes in, connecting with people to have them teach you their point of view, walking step in step, instead of trying to lead the way and be helpful and fix things. Externally, we need to educate others and take action. This is what differentiates an ally from a good person. A good person believes that all people are equal and have equal right to exist and be happy, as long as their existence doesn't harm another human being. Being an ally is being a good person. It's a core requirement. But it's also about recognizing and taking a small responsibility for those people who still don't recognize that all of us have a right to exist. Something that our institution practices in the Keogh School in its world peace building talks is radical empathy. The ability to momentarily glimpse the world as seen by another, to inhabit more than one thought world at the same time. This is the type of internal battle I'm talking about. Forcing yourself to see another person's point of view for the sake of preserving human life and liberty. This is the part of allyship that I think challenges a lot of us. While supporting those who are marginalized and holding them up is important, how do you go about having those difficult conversations that aren't supportive? Who are the people you're allied against? And it's at that point, you have to kind of think of it. They can't see the world from your lens. They haven't been reoriented yet. And sometimes it's easier to help them see the world through another person's lens, through a loved one, a friend, someone of the same gender, someone of the same skin color. And this is where allies become extremely important. You can help them see the picture we're trying to help everybody see. So really, how has Notre Dame helped me? Because I wouldn't be sitting here happy and smiling if it wasn't for Notre Dame, probably. As ironic as that is, being a Catholic institution, it cracks me up every day. So some of the resources that I've used to help navigate is to help me through my career, and probably the most important among all of them was, I think in my first or second year working here at Notre Dame, I took a course called Managing with Emotional Intelligence, Developing Your Self-Awareness. I'm sure many of us have heard of it or taken it or some version of it. It was a very important course to me because in that course, it forced me to confront a different version of myself. It forced me to see the world through a different lens. The speaker in that course asked a very poignant question, and it was, think of a time that you hurt another human being. What did you do? What did you say? And if you feel comfortable, share it. I thought back to a campfire in college with plenty of friends and beer, and it wasn't to the person's face, but that doesn't matter because it's mean anyways. I bashed another queer person. I made fun of their leggings. And that made me critically analyze my own queerness. Because why was I doing what I was doing? It wasn't because this person was a bad person or a mean person or they deserved it. It was all internal. It was my lens of the world, and it was how I was filtering the world. Probably that was the best course I've taken. As far as resources I utilize these days, which is question number 4, there's 5 of them, by the way. This one is not going to be as optimistic as the first answer. Really none. These days, I participate in the Spectrum Employee Resource Group. They're nice. Much like most of our employee resource groups, COVID has put a kink in all of our organizations. So we're not meeting as frequently or with as large of numbers, which kind of affects the support that the group is supposed to provide. So let me put my lens on it for you of why I don't seek out resources. I've fielded questions about transgender healthcare to other employees that HR couldn't. I've put myself on stage twice to influence this campus to accept me, and hopefully the second time I won't cry. A lot of my trans brothers and sisters don't have this emotional bandwidth. I mean, heck, I hardly do. I almost walked out the back door. I did walk out the back door. I just came back. And so I feel like I need to do this. Another thing that really leads me to not want to reach out for resources is I've inquired this year to Leadership, Ask HR, and Anthem for the question of, is transgender healthcare still excluded in 2022? I have not gotten an answer. I'm misgendered frequently. Yeah, when one of my best friends who's also trans asked me how I put up with it, she's also a corporate world gal. I said I keep my high smile and I kill him with kindness. And she just smiled back at me and she said, yeah, that's all you really can do sometimes. So, not to say there isn't anything that's helped me though. Those are all institutional. We're talking about allyship. And really it's the allyship in this conversation that saved me. It's the only thing that saved me over the last year. My only respite were the people that carried me across the finish line. My old manager, Jill, who I cried in front of more times than I'd like to admit over the last year, who supported me developing my career while transitioning at a Catholic university, and now I'm working in the 5th floor of the main building. My old coworker, Angelina, who no matter what would ask me if I was okay when she could clearly tell I was not okay, and who spent the last year and a half asking thoughtful questions about this topic and listening and really trying to understand. The type of understanding that when you say something to somebody, they stare at you and you can see the gears turning round and round. And I already mentioned him once, but my new coworker, Torrance, whose confidence and leadership in these marginalized communities is an inspiration for all of us to strive towards. So, like, much to the point, allyship is the only thing that's gotten me through and has kept me at Notre Dame. I probably would have walked out those doors a year ago at this point. So what can we all do to be better allies and save the next Gabby, save the next person that needs it, save the next woman, save the next anybody, because it's we all very much matter. Be open-minded. Think about what you're going to say. Think about how you're going to act and how it would affect another human being, even if they're not standing right next to you. Educate yourself. Learn about the world, other people's experiences of the world. Challenge the perceptions of others around you. And this is where it starts to get tough. It's a personal journey up until this. Ask them powerful questions about what they're thinking and why they think it. Because sometimes it's not about telling people what's right. It's about asking them and letting them get to the conclusion on their own. And then I always like this one because it's one of my favorite quotes. It's a great quote, and it is by Patrick Khalifa, a trans nonfiction author. Prejudice usually can't survive close contact with the people who are supposed to be so despicable, which is why the propagandists for hate always preach separation. Allyship is about coming together. It's about removing that separation so that all of a sudden we realize how human each other really are. And that it's not labels and it's not stereotypes, it's just human. And then this last one I'm going to preface. This is only if you feel safe to do so, because as an ally, if you step onto the front lines of this sided conflict, you are accepting some level of responsibility and risk. If you know somebody who acts in direct opposition to these values, challenge them on those ideas in the moment. If somebody uses a slur, ask them what they meant by that. If somebody misgenders a person, politely correct them and move the conversation onward. If a coworker speaks over somebody else in a meeting, be the person that brings it back around and says, so-and-so, you were about to say something. Would you like to finish your thought? And then ultimately, I'd like to end this with a saying from somebody much, much wiser than myself. And I wanted to derive a little bit of inspiration from our institution, how politically influential we are in the United States, and how Notre Dame is a religious leader, a Catholic leader. Institutions like this exist all around the world. One of them was run by Daisaku Aikida, a Buddhist philosopher and religious political leader in Japan. He says, courage and compassion are two sides of the same coin. Compassion without courage is not genuine. you may have a compassionate thought or impulse, but if you don't do or say anything, it's not real compassion. And so do something, say something.
Awesome. Wow, I don't even know how to follow that up, Gabby. That was amazing. And I want to pick up on a few things that you had to offer, because I think there were so many wonderful, I love that phrase of radical empathy. I think if you really just dwell on those words for a few minutes, that has such a powerful impact to what it means to be an ally, because it really is standing shoulder to shoulder with someone, understanding their concerns, their challenges, and trying to see how you can be a source of strength or help. And I loved you referring to allyship as kind of a lifeline, and that some of the key traits you mentioned of removing otherness, that it's so easy when you think of something being other than yourself to say, to become allied against it, to your point, to say, well, that's other than, that's different than what I believe or what I think, and to create that separation, but instead thinking about that togetherness and how everyone matters. And some of the really powerful things that we've heard in the first story and in yours was this ability to ask and listen. And those seem to be some of the most powerful tools as allyship as we think about what we might take away today. But just thank you for sharing your
And to
story.
speak to that last one, because that is very much important. Jill was the first one to be vulnerable with me. That was one of the ways I knew she was my ally. If you want to be there for somebody and you don't quite feel the connection, like they're not quite trusting you, they probably aren't. They probably haven't checked you off as one of their people they can trust. I have a list. I have a list of people I can trust personally. I have a list of people I can trust professionally. There are people that I just treat professionally, and then there's everybody else who's just a question mark. Really, other than the personal group, I have no idea what any of you are thinking about me, and I'm not going to assume it. It's very easy to assume, though. But as soon as Jill opened up and was vulnerable with me, I noticed that, okay, well, maybe it's a little safe. She opened the door. She exposed a little bit of herself, and at that moment, I was like, okay, maybe I can step through this door. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of one of my clues to knowing she was an ally. So hopefully that helps you all be better allies and maybe open the door a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, as I said, I want to make sure we have some time for any questions that people may have at the end. So we're going to move on to our last example of allyship. So Kara Palmer, Caitlin Reeves, thank you for being here. Women as women allies are very, very important. So I'm going to turn it, Caitlin, first to you and then to Kara to introduce yourselves, and then we have a few questions for you as well.
Yeah, my name is Caitlin Reeves. I actually don't currently work for the university. I am a full-time grad student at Purdue, getting a master's of human resources. But Kara and I first met when I was working in Mendoza back in 2017. I worked in the admissions team for some of our specialized master's programs that are based out of Chicago. So I was a road warrior, and I spent a lot of time talking to Phil from transportation, getting that blue Malibu and driving up to Chicago in order to fill seats for Mendoza. And I didn't really start my relationship with Kara until I left. I then went to work on with NDI in the International Student and Scholar Affairs office, working in immigration and helping all of our international students get their passports and visas, all the fun legal paperwork stuff that we don't really like to talk about in order to be able to attend this wonderful university. But Kara and I developed a relationship after I left and have really been able to continue that, not only through a move where I was no longer an indirect report to her, but also as I've left the university. So Kara's been a wonderful support system. Too much for words, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm really not sure how I can follow any of these wonderful people up. And I'm not as prepared as you are, Gabby, so you'll have to bear with me.
I had 3 pages, single space. Sorry if I overprepared.
No, it was great. It was great.
Fabulous.
So I've been at the university for about 13 years. I've been blessed with an amazing career path and a lot of allies and champions and mentors in my career. I'm currently in the in Mendoza as the Director of Administration, AKA Dean Kremer's Chief of Staff, and I've had a passion for mentoring and supporting women for a really long time. I was reflecting as, Gabby, you were talking about some of your history and standing up for things, and I can remember at a very young age being at my grandparents' house and my uncle making comments about women belong in the kitchen, and my grandma also using some language that was very not appropriate, and I would just go after them. And so I think I've been an ally for women, particularly, for a really long time. And so, it was it's a great opportunity. I think Michelle was saying this too, right? It's mutually beneficial for me to have the relationship that I have with Caitlin, both as, I see her as much as my ally and mentor as she sees me in that capacity.
Great. And maybe the two of you can you share some examples of your mentoring relationship? And it sounds like, even from hearing you talk, that you both have served as a mentor ally to one another in so many ways. Can you share with us a few examples and maybe tell us a little more about the relationship that you have with one another?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about Kara and I's relationship is that the label over time has definitely changed, and that's been a big question mark. Kara really showed up for me when I was transitioning to a new department on campus. I love your call out to working in the dome. When I got my dome job, I felt super on top of the world as well. Right. But mine was on the first floor, so you're totally winning. And it's a completely different environment. And I was joining a new team that operated in a completely different space. I was learning a very complicated job. And one of the people who remained to be there for me was Kara. And we had this going away party on my last day at Mendoza. And I asked her to come, and she was the only person outside of my direct department that I had asked to do that, because I knew that she would, and I knew that she would show up. And for me, that's really what mentorship is all about. It's about continuously showing up for someone in big ways and in small ways. For me, it's about making the drive to be here. I woke up at 5:30 this morning in order to be here because it's important. And it's about that text or that phone call or the small "I see you" that really makes that important. I think that that's something that Kara and I do well. We're definitely not perfect, but I think that's one of the big things for me.
Yeah, I should probably preface this for those who know me well. No, I did not push Caitlin to go to Purdue. She was actually a Purdue undergrad as well. Sadly, she has a picture at Purdue on my graduation date. The problem was I was 21 and she was much younger. So I bring that up because I think that allyship knows true allyship knows no age, no gender, no race. It is about supporting each other as humans. I like the way you said that, Gabby. I mentioned that the mentorship and the allyship has gone both ways. I have a crazy lifestyle, right? I'm, in my career, I have 3 wild and crazy, awesome children. I'm also currently in the process of pursuing my EMBA on campus, and, Caitlin will also show up for me and say, hey, do you need anything? Are you okay? And I think those are the kind of things is maybe you don't know as an ally what somebody needs, but to be able to be there, ask them, offer support, I think goes a really long way.
One of the things that I'm struck by is oftentimes you would think women would be each other's strongest allies, but we can be some of the worst people to one another in terms of just allyship or being there supporting, that sometimes there's a competitiveness that gets in the way of that. Can you talk about, has that been a part of your relationship? Have you experienced that even if it's not within your relationship, have you experienced it? In what ways do you think we can get better at that?
Yeah, I think historically, women have been fighting for limited real estate, and that has created competition, right? There's been one woman in a senior level position, or, and it was almost like that was all there was ever going to be. And so I think just naturally over time, we've learned to compete and be against each other. And I don't think we benefit in that way. It's amazing I mean, I'm always so excited. I just had a good friend that was promoted in the provost office and immediately reached out to her and had a conversation with her really recently. And she said the same thing, right? She definitely got the looks and had some really negative response from other women. And that's not how we rise together. So yeah, I would say that I have seen it, I've experienced it. It's not the world that I want to promote. I mean, as president of Thrive and leading the DE&I efforts in the college, right, that we don't gain, it's a community effort, right? And unless we come together as a community, nobody wins, right? Nobody comes out ahead.
Great, thank you. And Caitlin, what are the most important things that you think as you reflect on your relationship with Kara? What are some of the things that you feel have been most important to you in your development and in the allyship and the mentoring relationship?
Probably the most important thing is identifying someone who can, if you're looking for a professional mentor or a professional ally, identifying someone who has the skill set that can actually be able to be that person to help you. So for example, Linda, this is the first time we've sat next to each other. You seem fantastic, but I don't know enough about your skill set to know whether or not you're someone who can actually lead that path. Now, Kara and I's story is, I don't know, maybe a little vanilla, I guess, to say, in that we came from a very similar upbringing. I'm a Granger native. Kara was also, born and raised in this area. We both went to Purdue for our undergrad. We both came to work here. She works in an HR role. I'm working on my HR master's. So in a lot of ways, we're very aligned in the things that we're trying to accomplish. So when I was not even really looking for a mentor, but when I really realized that that's the role that Kara was actually playing before I realized what she was doing, is that I trying to follow in her footsteps, very much so. She's someone that I look up to and someone that is a fantastic role model, I think, for all young women. And I saw her tapping into other women in my career stage as well. Notre Dame was my first job out of college, so as you might imagine from your past career experiences, or maybe for those of you who have been here at Notre Dame for the majority of your career, it is a different work environment than the corporate world, and it is a different work environment than a lot of other institutions of higher education. So really stepping into the workforce for the first time in this space was something that I had to learn to navigate, and every team is different, every building is different. And Kara was really able to help me navigate that in finding my frustrations and figuring out, okay, this is how I need to talk to people if this is what I want to accomplish. Because when you're 22 and fresh out of college, you don't always have those skills. And Kara was extremely patient with me. And I think that that's something that I've definitely seen grow throughout our relationship, is just Kara's patience is phenomenal.
Yeah, my kids would not agree. I just want to add on to something that Caitlin kind of alluded to, and Gabby, I know you did as well, but the power of the relationship, I think we all know, anybody who's been at the university for more than a half a second, right, knows that relationships are everything. And taking the opportunity to build those relationships, come to these kind of events, network, so that you can find those people. I mean, in Thrive, we've really been talking about the mentoring platform and building mentoring relationships. And some of that, right, that's a tool that we have that we can use to connect people, but it's really being intentional about reaching out and finding those relationships. And Latanya, I think you mentioned this, like organically, right? Mm-hmm. Like that you just feel that like connection with people. And that doesn't happen if you don't put yourself out there and build those relationships to find those connections intentionally.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think one of the interesting things that has come up kind of in this is the question of how do you identify an ally? I mean, even to what you said, Gabby, or you, Caitlin, like neither of you really know me very well to know whether am I your ally right now, or I am because we're here doing this. But when we walked in this auditorium together, you don't know me. And so I think to your point, Kara, it can come from, as we've seen today, a working relationship. It can come from one of the employee resource groups, from this group, from Spectrum, from all of the other young leaders, all of the resource groups that we have at the university. But the more you put yourself in various situations, the more able you are to find those people that open themselves up to you, that ask those questions, that listen, that you find that sense of empathy and connection, and that you have a chance to tell your story and to hear the story of others. So I do think that's a really important point. And then before we open up for questions, Caitlin or Kara, any closing thoughts you might have on this topic or on Women as Women Allies?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up really well. The biggest thing for me, I think, that is as people are identifying allies, you can't always expect it to be something that's immediate. I think that Kara and I have made lots and lots of little deposits into our relationship over time, and it's taken 4 years for us to get to the point that we are, but I think that it's a lot about commitment. I'm committed to Kara's success, and I know that she's committed to mine, and even when things are hard, we show up for each other. And we can be that listening ear or the shoulder to cry on. There's been countless times where I've stormed into Kara's office, shut the door, and just melted down the back because I couldn't handle something that happened, and she was the person that was able to be there for me in those moments, and being able to act appropriately. And even in times when Kara has needed that support, I try to be there for her in that way. And I think that that's something that's unique about our relationship. I know that Kara puts a lot of deposits into everyone that she meets on campus, but specifically women who are early in their career, especially at the university. Really just being there for her, I think, is something that stands out in our relationship. It's not something that I think a lot of others do. Maybe it's too much, I don't know. But just really making sure that she's okay. Because I think the point for me where our relationship started was I gave Kara a handwritten note, said, hey, I hope you're having a good day, something along these lines, and she told me how much that meant to her. So if you are doing those things, or if you are receiving support from someone, let that person know that that means something to you, because that way they can continue to do it. And I think the thing that really stuck out to me with Kara, she says, there's not a lot of glory at the top. Once you get into a senior leadership position, there's not a lot of people from the top that can pull you up. So I started to ask myself, what does support look like supporting someone above? So I think that also really ties back into Marty and Michelle's relationship about, what does it mean to be supportive to your boss? What does it mean to be supportive to someone who's above you? Because it can't all just be pulling up. It's never going to be its full potential if that's the only way that we're thinking about allyship.
All right, well, I'd like to make sure we have a few minutes to offer the audience if there are any questions that anybody would like to ask any of our panelists. Sure.
I have a comment as opposed to a question. Gabby, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having the confidence to walk back in the door and know that you make an impact when you talk.
Thank you.
Yep.
Gabby had said at one time, I wonder what people are thinking. Then more or less kind of got, I think you're amazing. Okay? I think that you're a very valuable person, and I hope you stay steadfast, because you have a lot to give this world. And it will get better. I have 2 mixed grandchildren, and you talk about critical race theory. My 2 grandchildren, his mother is from Jamaica, okay? And father is a graduate from college, so is her mother. Mother's brilliant. I love her to death. They were 27 years old when they got married, and were married 6 years before they had them, okay? People don't think before they speak, So your value and who you are should be the core of inside you. Don't let anybody touch that. People will come. People will come.
Thank you. No, I'm blushing.
Marty just put a thing in there that you can't hear with the questions from the audience if somebody can repeat.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
I just want to make one more just comment from a women and women allyship perspective. I have continued to be so amazed with the Thrive ERG. I mean, I know I'm a little biased because I've been part of it and now as president, but Linda, I don't know if I've shared this with you. We have a very very large advisory board made up of senior women like yourself, not senior women, senior level women.
That's okay. I turned 50 this year.
And at our first advisory board meeting, everybody showed up. I mean, it was powerful to me. And not only did they show up to a meeting, but they showed up to the conversation. Y'all have shown up in these kind of events. And I think that is the exact right symbol that we need of bringing other, raising one another up and helping one another. So, I just think taking those opportunities and as a resource, right, that's what an ERG is supposed to do. Is so if you're not feeling that in your day-to-day, there are opportunities for resources and allyship and people that can relate to and build relationships with. So thank you, Linda, for your allyship for other women and probably many others across campus.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I I know we have a few minutes left. I want to firstly thank all of our panelists. I know Michelle had to drop off, but Marty, Michelle, LaTanya, Gabby, Caitlin, Kara, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your stories and inspiring others. I think you gave us so many wonderful things to take away today that will allow us to think differently about allyship. And just, again, a couple of things that I wrote down. I think it comes back to this asking and listening, that that's the biggest way that we can open the door to educate ourselves. I heard that so many times through this whole thing of people going outside their comfort zone or outside the small sphere of what you know to just learn more about something else. And that starts with that ask and with that empathetic listening and really beginning to become invested. And I like, Caitlin, what you described about relationships are like a bank account. You hate, of course, being a numbers person, I'm going to put it in that but they are. You have to put deposits in, and then there are times where you need to make withdrawals as you're facing something. And so to build up a large balance in your bank account, it takes a lot of small transactions over time, and that builds this foundation of trust. And when you get to the point that you can trust someone and you know that they support you, that's kind of the sweet spot of allyship. But I think it can feel like such an overwhelming thing, like we might all leave here today and think, I'm going to go be an ally. I'm going to walk right out of the library and find the first person I see. But I think what you're hearing today is it starts with just that very small thing of identifying someone whose backgrounds, beliefs, values, where you have some commonalities, but where there are differences, and where you see an opportunity to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. The small things matter. So whether it's a note, whether it's a simple question that you mentioned, Gabby, how are you today? How are you doing? Like, how can I help you with that? Those little things over time end up making a huge difference. So we shouldn't all feel like we've got to leave here and do these monumental, get up on stage like all of you have done today, and go right to that level of being out there for allyship. But it can start with just finding one person today that you can say, how are you doing? How can I help? You look like you're having a tough day, or you look like you're having a great day. So I think that's really the thing I hope that I took away from today, that I hope as we leave here we can all kind of have that mind that it takes a very small things done over time.
I feel like Notre Dame's Green Initiative has the perfect words for that. Nobody has to do everything, but everybody has to do something.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Absolutely. I think that's a tremendous way to end our session today. Thank you for that, Gabby. And thank you all for being here. Marty, thank you as well. And as Kara said, I just deeply, on behalf of the Thrive Steering Committee, appreciate you coming out to these events. This is just one way. I've had so many people say, oh, well, that's the women's group. And I'm like, no, this is all of our resource groups on campus represent populations of the university, but they provide the perfect opportunity to understand more deeply. So I just really thank you all for coming out, being a part of this, and being a part of all the things that Thrive is doing within the university community. So thank you.